It's the dog days of summer out there, and records are being broken for temperatures across the country. But over at ACEC, our eyes are fixed on October, because that's when we're going to be holding our 2023 Fall Conference. That's right, and registration is open now for the event taking place from October 15th through the 18th in beautiful Austin, Texas. Now go over to our website, www.acec.org/FC, to get all the information you need to register for this event. Now seize your opportunity to be part of the largest event in the engineering design service industry, focused on the business of engineering, where professionals attend educational sessions, major networking events, forums, roundtables, and more. Early bird again ends on September 14th. Make sure you lock in the best rate possible. Go to www.acec.org/FC for all the information you need. Again, the 2023 ACEC Fall Conference, Austin, Texas, October 15th through 18th. We'll see you there. Welcome to Engineering Influence, a podcast from the American Council of Engineering Companies, and the ACEC Research Institute just launched its 2023 Q3 Engineering Business Sentiment Survey. And to discuss the findings of the survey and what's changed from Q2, very pleased to welcome back to the program Joe Bates, who is the keeper of the research and the really the numbers guy and the person we rely on for all of our statistical information and research over at the Institute. So, Joe, welcome back to the program.
Thanks, Jeff. It's always great to be here with you.
So, Joe, I mean, what has really stood out to you in this most recent survey? What are the big hot topics that we're really looking at here coming from the survey?
I think what's most notable in the third quarter sentiment survey is that firm executives are much, much more positive about the U.S. economy than they have been. We're seeing improvements quarter over quarter on that metric since middle of last year, when inflation hit the high point in June of 2022. So it seems that as inflation has started to come down, at least the consumer price inflation index, that firm executives are also feeling better overall about the economy. And I think that's also reflected by the fact that we aren't in a recession right now. And even though we were predicted to be one at this time about a year ago. So I think overall, that's the big headline story. And we're still seeing workforce shortages. That's been something that has plagued our industry as well as the U.S. economy for the last few years. And so that's something that we're still seeing a really big challenge for firms.
Yeah, it seems like the recession was that, was honestly one of those things that everybody talked about the recession potentially being there. And then all of a sudden, it never actually materialized. And it doesn't seem as though it's going to materialize. And the question really becomes, one of, are we out of the woods? And is it something that's not going to rear its ugly head this year or coming into next? And we're also, seeing some of that inflation, to your point, softening a bit. What's your take looking at the numbers? Are we totally out of the woods yet, or is recession still a potential, event happening in the future?
I don't think we're totally out of the woods. Now, a year ago, I was saying I don't think we're going to be in a recession next year, at this time that we're in. So I was right about that. And the reason I said that was we just have too many people that have jobs, right? 2/3 of our economy is supported by consumer spending, and we were at historic unemployment rates. So we're at more than full employment, and we're still at more than full employment. So for me, it's when we start to see job growth slow and perhaps turn downward a little bit, that's going to be an indicator to me that we might be in position to have a recession. Um, if we have some soft GDP numbers, that's not a big concern for me. But yeah, so at the moment, the economists are saying, hey, not this year, but now they're saying maybe next year in the second half. So they're kind of kicking the can down the
Yeah.
road.
They're
And
always
that's really
so
frustrating.
optimistic, right?
Yeah. It's kind of frustrating, I think, because everybody's looking around saying, "Wait a second, you said we're going to be in a recession now." So I don't think I'm seeing any recession on the horizon yet, and I'm going to keep looking at those job numbers to really understand what's going on. Now, there's another issue at play here, which is other than consumer inflation, because we have such a tight labor market, not just in our industry, but across the US, we are still seeing wage inflation. And that is being seen in some of the wholesale price numbers, the producer price index. So that's something that I'm going to be watching more closely. But I'm really not convinced that we have a recession on the horizon. And we asked a new question this time in this quarter about recession predictions. And it's really interesting that we literally have 50% of firm executives think that there's a better than 50% likelihood of recession. And the other half say there's less than a 50% likelihood. So we're like, everyone's split down the road right now.
Huh. Split down the middle. Yeah. Yeah. That's it's really interesting, especially going into a campaign year, a political year, because that's going to add another layer of complexity to it, because you're going to see probably a lot more fear mongering going on, um, that to belie Bidenomics or whatever you have going on here in the political side. So that's going to also kind of uh, get pulled in with everything else going on. I mean, economics is a social science for a reason, right? I mean, it depends on exactly what happens. There are a lot of factors out there, but if we haven't gotten to a recession period yet, it will be interesting to see exactly what could potentially push us over that line. Um, from an industry standpoint and market sector standpoint, what are the market sectors that are really showing some positive momentum, and which are the ones that are kind of retracting?
Sure. So we're still seeing a lot of positive sentiment in the sectors that are being supported by the IIJA spending. So anything like wastewater and
Mhm.
water projects to various transportation, including roads and bridges, airports, etc. So those are all areas that are currently seeing extremely positive optimism. The couple areas that are doing less
Yeah.
well are residential land development and commercial real estate. And so, not surprising, seeing as we are in a slump for sure in those two markets. And we've been in a slump for a while. But there's some good news in this quarter's sentiment study, and that is the future sentiment regarding those two sectors is improving. It's they're not going to be doing gangbusters by any means, but this future sentiment looking 12 months out, it is improving in those two sectors. So that's kind of where the winners and the losers are at the moment. But we see a few other
Yeah.
areas that are doing quite well. They're not the best or the strongest, but they're also not doing poorly, such as education, healthcare, data centers, communications. So there's a lot of sectors that are doing very well right now.
Yeah. On the residential land development, it's interesting because that's I guess tied into the increased rates on mortgages, and seeing how the mortgage rates going up to about 7%, and will they cross 8%, and what does that mean for the housing market and first time home buyers. Saw an article today that Zillow for the first time is actually offering financing where it's a $1 down payment on select market. I think they're doing it in Arizona right now, and they're going to see if they're going to expand that out to other markets to try to ease the burden on down payments for first time home buyers, because these rates are of course sidelining a lot of younger buyers. And of course, those buyers who are already have equity, you could sell a house right now and buy two more. if you wanted. So it's interesting to see exactly how that's going to drive the residential land development. How closely in your experience does the residential land development kind of mirror the commercial land development side? Are developers that concerned about rates? Are they concerned about lagging residential and how they make their decisions on development?
Sure. I don't think they're very well connected, to be honest with you. Interest rates will affect both for sure. But we have this weird dynamic right now where the pandemic hurt commercial real estate and it actually helped residential real estate. So that's a little bit unusual. And we're still seeing very high vacancy rates in many metropolitan areas. A lot of firms, even though they're starting to bring workers back to the office, there's much more liberal policies in place than there ever were before. So their footprint is smaller. They might not need to have as many chairs available on any given day. So that's really what we're seeing in the commercial real estate sector that's causing some problems is this hangover from the pandemic. So, when it comes to residential, you're right. There's a lot of people like myself. I locked in a 2.5% interest rate. I'm not going anywhere, right? Like, how am I going to trade that up for a 7.5 interest
Yeah, exactly. It's going to be interesting to see how that shakes out. And I can see the money is now coming out through IIJA, the IRA. You have the lot of investment, and of course, data centers, chip manufacturing, electrification in the auto market. So those sectors showing improved sentiment is not really a surprise. Which region of the country is probably showing the most positive trend in your recent survey?
Well, it's really interesting, Jeff, that when we look at the regional differences, they kind of bubble up and down. And so in one quarter, it might look like the Northeast is a little stronger. And in another quarter, maybe it's the Midwest. So it's really hard to pin that one down. It tends to be a little bit more volatile. But I will say that generally speaking, we see less optimism out in the West than we tend to see in the Northeast and the South and the Midwest. That's just a very, very generalized observation. So I think that different parts of the country are strong in different sectors, and that's probably more important is looking at those sectors. I think that's the bigger observation. Yep.
Well, there's a lot of takeaways from this survey, and I really encourage everyone out there to download it. It is free to download and take a look at, because it helps get a better idea of where the market is right now, where the market might be. And it's a good business intelligence to have to make strategic decisions on where you might be looking to invest. Joe, outside of the sentiment reports, tell us a little bit more about what the institute's up to right now, and what's on the horizon.
So we always have a lot going on at the Institute right now, Jeff. And so we're working on a few different things. We have an initiative called Firm of the Future, and we're going to be really diving into that in a lot more effort and detail this fall. That's going to entail some scenario planning. So it's going to be looking at what if this happens, what if that happens, and really trying to understand what are the factors that are at play in the next 10 to 20 years. So, regardless of what happens, say with AI, we know there's going to be impacts by AI. So, what can firms do to get ready for that? That's one thing that we're working on. We're also going to be unveiling at Fall Conference our fourth annual industry assessment and forecast for the industry, and so that's going to be new, and that's always something that people look forward to. We also have some workforce topics on the agenda. Everybody's concerned about workforce right now. So one of the things we're going to be working on is looking at how can firms attract talent in this day and age. What are younger workers looking for? What are their expectations versus what the older, more seasoned professionals have put in place in terms of policy? So we're doing a lot right now, and those are just a couple things that you can look forward to, Jeff.
Outstanding. Well, go to www.ececresearchinstitute.org for the sentiment survey and also take a look at what's going to be happening on the horizon here. Yeah, you're right. The Institute is really going gangbusters between the research you already have out, the updated research that's going to be released. You have a great data set now to go back to and look at historical data. And then between scholarships and Firm of the Future, there's a lot going on. So check out the Institute. Follow them on social media as well. And Joe, I really appreciate the time you took to join us today to update us on the new sentiment survey.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Jeff. Anytime.
Great. And again, this has been Engineering Influence, a podcast from the American Council of Engineering Companies, and we'll see you next time.